Hi guys, so welcome to high school biology, and today we'll be reviewing some questions of evolution based on our previous classes. So we took three classes to learn about the evidence of evolution, Lamarck versus Darwin, theory of natural selection, types of natural selection, Hardy-Weinberg theory, patterns of evolution, theories of evolution, mass extinctions, and more. So before we go on to the questions based on what we have learned, let's go over some of the important concepts of evolution. So first, evolution is not always a slow process. We saw that many evolution is a slow process. It takes hundreds of thousands of years to develop a new feature or to create a new type of species. But there are some exceptions. For example, a population of bacteria can develop resistance to a particular antibiotic after only a few months of exposure. So this proves that evolution is not always a slow process. Next, we have that evolution does not occur at the same rate in all organisms. So humans have changed a great deal in the last hundreds of thousands of years, and we developed to our changes, and we adapted around the environment around us, and we started to form new features and abandoning some. But some species, such as the horseshoe crab, has hardly changed at all in the past generations. So this is an example that the rate of evolution depends on the organisms and their environment. Number three, we have that evolution does not always cause organisms to become more complex. So instead, it may act in such a way that complex forms give rise to simpler ones. So the early embryo of the sea star is bilaterally symmetrical, which is similar to human development and is considered to be advanced and complex. The adult sea star, however, shows a radial symmetry, which is considered simple and primitive. For number four, let's move on to the next slide. Four, we have that evolution occurs in populations, not individuals. So a single giraffe did not develop a long neck because it needed it. Instead, a short-necked giraffes could not compete in a competitive environment and they died out. And that's how only long-necked giraffes survived. So evolution does not occur like really quickly in one individual. Instead, it occurs as a population. And finally, the last important concept is that evolution is directed by changes in the environment. So animals that evolved in the ocean must be streamlined in order to move freely. Animals adapt to changes in their environment and evolve based on the surroundings. So now that we know all the important concepts of evolution, let's go over some questions. First question is that we have to find the exception. So all the following statements about evolution are true except. And I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to look at the question. So we discussed that evolution does not occur rapidly, sometimes than at others, so we can rule out choice A. Then we also discussed that choices B, C, and E are also correct, so we can rule those out. So the answer is D, single organisms as well as populations are they do commonly evolve. So remember, population is commonly the smallest group to evolve. In the case of the peppered moths, for example, no single white moth became dark. So when the environment became darker, the white moths were visible and were preyed upon, while the dark ones had the selective advantage. So again, single organisms do not evolve, they evolve as a population. So this is an exception. So D would be correct. Next question. According to the Hardy-Weinberg theory, which of the following represents a homozygous dominant individual? I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to look at this. So in the Hardy-Weinberg theory, or the equation, the dominant allele is represented by P. So P is dominant allele. And P squared is homozygous dominant. The recessive allele is represented by Q. Then Q squared will have to be homozygous recessive. And then 2PQ would have to be the hybrid individual. So therefore, if the question is asking for homozygous dominant, then the correct answer would be C. Since homozygous dominant individual is P squared. We'll go on to the next question. So we talked about the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium and 5 requirements, and that 5 requirements should be met before. So I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to look at this question and think about the requirements that Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium should meet. So the first rule of the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is that population must be very large. So why does a population have to be large in this case? It's because in a small population, the smallest change in the gene pool will have a major effect in allele frequencies. And for the second requirement for the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is that the population must be isolated from other populations. So there must be no migration of organisms into or out of the gene pool because that could alter the allele frequencies. And thirdly, there must be no mutations. So in a mutation in the gene pool could cause a change in allele frequency or introduce a new allele. So that's why you cannot have a mutation. Fourthly, um, mating must be random. So if individuals select mates, then those individuals who are better fit will have a reproductive advantage. And lastly, there must be no natural selection. There cannot be natural selection since this causes changes in relative frequencies of alleles in a gene pool. So if we look at the answer choice A, if natural selection were operating, then the population would be evolving. But Hardy-Weinberg describes a population in equilibrium, or in other words, not evolving. So all the other choices describe populations that are stable and not evolving, but choice A, which says natural selection exists, is an exception. So the answer for number 3 would be choice A. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to look at question number 5. It says all of the following are part of Darwin's theory of natural selection except. So change in an organism can be caused by mutations. However, mutations are random and do not result in a need to change. Organisms are no longer adapted to a changing environment. They either die or migrate. So choice E describes a statement made by Lamarck, who stated that organisms change because they need to. All of the other statements are correct about the theory of natural selection. So in this case, we had to figure out what was the exception of Darwin's theory of natural selection. So if we look at the choice E, then it says that this is a theory by Lamarck, not Darwin. Lamarck supported a change in which they change in response to a need in the environment. So the correct answer for number 5 will be choice E. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to solve question number 6. It says all of the following are true of homologous structures except. So homologous structures are structures that have the same internal bone structure, but have different functions. So although the wing of a bat and a fly's wing have the same function, they are not alike structurally. So those are called analogous structures, not homologous. So they do not demonstrate a common ancestry and are a evidence of convergent evolution. So homologous structures are demonstrate common ancestry, so we have to take that out. And example of a wing. An example of a wing of the bat and a person's arm. They are they have the same internal bone structure but have different functions, so that cannot be it because we're looking for exceptions. And if we look at C, an example is a wing of a bat and a wing of a fly. We were told that this is an analogous structure, So this would have to be the answer. So through questions 7 to 12, we have to choose from the list of terms below. So you guys can solve number 7. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to solve that. So inheritance of acquired traits are related to Lamarck's theory of evolution. And his theory relied on the ideas of use and disuse and of inheritance of acquired characteristics. His theories stood against Darwin, but Lamarck's theory were disapproved a while ago. So the answer here would be choice B. And same for number 8. Try use what we learned about Lamarck's theory of evolution and apply it to question 8. And I'll give you guys a couple of seconds. So this question is also similar to Lamarck's theory of evolution of use and disuse of characteristics. So this question is also choice B. And I'll give you guys a couple of seconds for number 9. So the theory of punctuated equilibrium proposes that new species appear suddenly after a long period with no evolution. And this proposition was developed by Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge. So this theory of punctuated equilibrium belongs to Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge. So choice C. And number 10, populations tend to overpopulate. Which of the following terms match it? So populations tend to grow exponentially, and this idea was developed by Darwin. So the correct answer would be choice A, Charles Darwin. And for number 12, we have survival of the fittest. And this should be fairly easy. So survival of the fittest is one of the 4 basic idea of Darwin's theory of evolution. So number 12 would also be A, Charles Darwin. Moving on to question 13. So the age of Earth, according to scientific evidence, is closest to well, scientists studied this actually, and the studies of radioactive dating and half-life tells us that Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. So the closest answer would be choice E. Pangea is, I'll give you guys a couple of seconds. So the theory of continental drift stated that about 250 million years ago, the continents were locked together in a single supercontinent known as Pangea, and it slowly separated into 7 continents over the course of the next 150 million years. So in this case, Pangea was a single supercontinent that existed 250 million years ago. So it would be choice E. So which of the following is an example of divergent evolution? So let's go over each of the choices. Starting from, let's do choice B. So choice B refers to convergent evolution, where unrelated organisms have a similar appearance because they evolved in the same or similar environment. So that is um, a convergent evolution, so that cannot be it. And choice C refers to coevolution, while choice D refers to the founder effect, which is an example of a genetic drift. So C and D are out as well. And choice E refers to a genetic drift as well. So choice E is out. So the only example of divergent evolution would be choice A. While wildebeests separated from each other by a newly formed river are now separate species. So this is the last slide, question 16 to 20, and you have to choose the terms below. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to solve 16. So number 16 states that Darwin discovered 14 species of finches on the Galapagos Islands that all evolved from one or original species of finch. So Darwin's finches are a classical example of adaptive radiation, where it is the emergence of numerous species from a single common ancestor. So this answer choice would be D, adaptive radiation. And number 17, having extra sets of chromosomes in every cell. So which of the following terms below states that? Well, if we look at choice B, polyploidy, polyploidy is a type of mutation that results from errors during meiosis. It results in having more than 2 sets of chromosomes. And number 17 says having extra sets of chromosomes in every cell, so the answer would be polyploidy, answer choice B. And number 18, the peppered moths are one example of. So what happened to the peppered moths in England is a good example of directional selection because the population changed from white to dark as time passed, leaving the more advantaged moths to live while the other ones they slowly disappear. So choice 8, number 18 will be choice E. Number 19, 2 populations of one species evolved into 2 separate species after being separated for millions of years million of years by a canyon is. So being separated by a geographical barrier such as a canyon is called geographic isolation. This isolation may cause the formation of new species. So the answer here would be choice A. And lastly, we have a very small dog and a very large dog cannot mate because of the enormous size difference of the 2 animals. So which of the terms below describe this? So if we look at choice C, reproductive isolation, this isolation states that closely related species may be unable to mate because of anatomical incompatibility, such as size in this case. So a very small dog and a very large dog cannot mate because of anatomical incompatibility. So the answer here would be C, reproductive isolation. Oops, sorry. So that is it for all the questions. Let's go back and try to review what we have learned. So first, we started off with important concepts, and there are 5 important concepts that you should know about evolution. Evolution is not always a slow process. Number 2, evolution does not occur at the same rate in all organisms. And number 3, evolution does not always cause organisms to become more complex. And number 4, evolution occurs in populations, not individuals. And finally, number 5, evolution is directed by changes in the environment. And then we went over questions about what we have learned in the past 3 classes. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful to you guys. And if you guys have any questions or anything you guys want me to go over next, please comment down in the comment section. And I'll see you guys next week.